Doors are 76 to Sim, 82 to myself. And the way the scoring works is 5 points for completely correct scoreline, 1 point for a correct result on the Style Man. Once you pick them, you can't pick them again for the rest of the season. 5 points for a goal, 2 points for an assist. And let's get into the weekend's action. Leicester against Nottingham Forest. It finished 3-1 to Forest. Both of us going for 1-1. And it carries on Forest's unbelievable start to this Premier League campaign. And not just Forest, but Chris Wood as well, bagging 2 goals on the day. The guy just cannot stop scoring at the moment. I think 7 goals for Chris Wood so far this season, which is only Erling Haaland, I think, has scored more than him in this campaign.
And think about how he finished last season as well.
Yeah, it's unbelievable, the amount of how he can hit the back of the net in such a regularity. But you got to give credit to Nuno. You got to give credit to this Forest side because they just keep winning.
When do people start having to give Nuno an apology? Because look, to be fair to him, like, he did a really good job at Wolves, got them in Europe, didn't he? And like, you know, I know his last season didn't end that well, but obviously his Spurs tenure, which was an absolute disaster, has made everyone think that Nuno's just a rubbish manager. But he's showing at Forest, kept them up last season, and look how he's started this season, incredibly. And I think he's built quite a good squad, you know, built to exactly what he needs with Hudson-Odoi and Elanga, and I know Gibbs White's injured, but, you know, Gibbs White in front of a firing Chris Wood, like, he's doing a fantastic job at the moment, and it's a really impressive win. Like, these are the kind of games I thought Forest should drop points in, but they got the win in the end, and I think they deserved it, albeit that the last goal, what is Faust doing? Just heading it straight to Chris Wood, who was able to head it over the keeper, and but, you know, some good finishes. The finish for the second goal was brilliant from Chris Wood. He was able to turn on a sixpence and fire it to the corner. I was reading one thing, though, because Harry Winks had a great game on Friday.
Gary Neville calling for him to be called up.
Gary Neville said Harry Winks for England. England don't have a midfielder like Harry Winks, and he hasn't had England caps before. Is he on his path to have another England cap?
He's actually going about his season quietly. He's having a really good season. I think assists in his last 2 games for Winksy.
Well. Really good assist.
No, he's playing really well. But I think when you're looking at the options that England have in midfield, I can't really see a gap for him.
As good a passer as Harry Winks?
Who would
Calvin
you put?
Phillips can get in there. Well, he's not.
Can he still get in there?
Well, if he did for a time.
Who's England's sitting midfielders that they've got? It's just Mainu and Rice.
Rice, Mainu, yeah.
Who else?
Gallagher.
I think they're all better than Winks.
Probably.
And if we're looking at Harry Winks as the answer for England with all the talent that we do have, then I think we're doing something wrong here.
Winks is a great player, mate.
Winks is playing very well this season. I don't know, like, injuries clearly held him back at Spurs because when he first burst onto the scene, he was brilliant. But I think at Leicester, he's kind of found his level.
Maybe.
And let's move on to Aston Villa against Bournemouth. Finished 1-1 on the day. Sim went for 3-1. I went for 2-1. And it was a late show for Bournemouth, who came from behind in the last second of the game to draw it up. And Villa aren't that great after playing Europe, are they?
I would say they were unlucky in this one because they were pretty much dominant for a lot of this game. I was watching it, and when they did score late on, 15 minutes to go, Ross Barkley puts it away. I think it was reward for what was quite a good performance. They got a bit unlucky with the goal that got ruled out through VAR.
Well, John McGinn.
John McGinn slams it home on the edge of the box, but Watkins just couldn't keep it in. I think the replay show it was just out of play. I think it was the right decision. But then they got that late goal. I feel Bournemouth struggled. Bournemouth had some moments on the counter, but they really struggled to make any chances of it. As much as I think Clivert had some efforts from range and stuff like that, but they really struggled to make real meaningful opportunities. And I think Villa as well, I don't think they were making bags of opportunities, but they had enough to probably deserve to win the game. And when they got their goal, Barkley, it was a bit of luck with it, but Barkley got the goal and it looked like that was a reward. But to be fair, I actually thought in the last 5 minutes, Bournemouth gave it a real good go and Villa were hanging on a bit. They were getting a few set pieces, getting close on a couple of occasions, and then literally it was in the 96th or 6 minutes added on. Evan Nielsen gets that header across the face to goal and they get their draw. Bit of luck with it. Villa will be very frustrated. But as well, maybe punishment for probably sitting a bit too deep in those last 5 minutes.
Brentford against Ipswich finished 4-3 to Brentford on the day. Sim went for 2-1. I went for 3-2. And I thought that 3-2, I thought that 5-pointer was going to come my way. Unbelievable game of football. And it feels like every game that Brentford are involved in at the moment are just absolute classics. You look back a couple of weeks ago, that game against Wolves, which was a brilliant game. But
the league's entertainers.
yeah, they are. And they go 2-0 down in the space of the opening 20 minutes or something with Hurst and Smodics, half an hour it was. And then they're level before half-time at 2-2. They get a penalty just after half-time to make it 3-2. Harry Clark gets sent off and you're like, oh, there is no way back in this game for Ipswich. And somehow they get that equaliser with about 4 minutes to go. And you're thinking Ipswich are on their way to a brilliant point here. But Brian Mbeumo does what Brian Mbeumo does. And he gets that goal in the 6th minute of stoppage time to give Brentford the 3 points. But what a horror show it was for that Harry Clark. He gets sent off. He gives away a penalty and scores an own goal all in the same game.
Yeah, I think he was second player to do it. I can't remember who I read who. The first one was Jan Bednarek when Southampton lost 9-0 to Man United a few years ago. He was the first player to do it, and Harry Clark is the second. Yeah, shocker. I felt bad for Ipswich because we've seen them play this season, and they've been quite good in a lot of their games, and they just haven't been able to get results or wins. And I thought 2-0 up away at Brentford. Given the way they've played a lot of this season, they actually changed up a lot because they put Jack Clark and Delap on the bench for this one from the start, and they really made a few changes. And I thought, wow, he's really shaking things up a bit. But then they go 2-0 up. I thought it was really working. But what's so frustrating, they were 2-0 up with 5 minutes to go in the first half, and they conceded 2 late goals in the first half, and that's got to be a massive gut punch. I couldn't even see it out till half time. As you say, second half was an absolute kamikaze, but as much as Harry Clark had a mare, I mean, that last goal, what is Muric doing? It's a cross. It's a cross from Mbeumo. In fact, what happens was a cross has come in and the defender leaves it like this because it's going right through the keeper. So he just leaves it. He goes, right, keepers. And the keeper just lets it dive under him. If you see when where the ball goes, it dives under his arm, like here. It doesn't even go right in the corner. He just reacts late to it. And this is a keeper who was making so many mistakes last season for Burnley. I don't know why Ipswich thought he was a Premier League quality keeper, because I thought he was terrible last season, and they signed him, and he's just made a terrible error, cost them a really valuable point, because when Liam Delap scores that, it would have been a great point for Ipswich. But let's talk about Liam Delap. What was that? 5 goals this season. A lot of talk around him at the moment. What a season he's having at the moment.
He looks like a real player, man. He really does. The Man City Academy doing it again, and I feel like he's going to be. I don't think he'll be at Ipswich past this season, man. I think a team is going to snap him up because he looks like a real player.
Yeah.
Looks physical, strong, knows where the back of the net is. His finishing is class. I mean, it's hard to see like a real down point in his play.
Yeah, phenomenal. And he looks so strong, so physical as well. And clearly, as a despot, that effort, I don't know if you saw that effort after Mbeumo scored the winner. He then takes a shot from that Kane goal against Arsenal. He takes a shot from that kind of area, and he just smacks the inside of the post last minute. Yeah. Oh, what an effort, and what a goal that would have been.
I think if Richarlison does end up going in the summer, I think Spurs should definitely be taking a look at Delap for sure. But how much do you reckon he costs? I mean, with this, if he carries on this form for the rest of the season, surely they signed him for 20 million. Surely they want like 3 times that price.
The way he's going. I wonder if City have a buyback or something, because they usually do with these things. But he's going to cost. I think you're looking at. I mean, if Solanke went for 65, you're probably looking at the 50 million mark.
Yeah. Brighton against Wolves up next, 2-2 in the game. Sim went for 0-0, so he gains a point for this one. I went for 3-1 to Brighton. And Danny Welbeck, man, what a season he's having as well. I think he scored more this season already than he has done in the past 10 years or something crazy like that, or a bit less than 10 years. But they go 1-0 up on the stroke of half time, and I think it was good reward as well for the play and the dominance that they were having in that first half. Evan Ferguson comes on and scores with 5 minutes to go, and you're like, all right, that's it, game done. But I felt like Evan Ferguson, when he did score, it was against the run of play. Wolves were putting it on Brighton. I don't think Brighton didn't come out for the second half, really. I thought Wolves were the better team throughout that second half, and the domination kind of paid towards the end, because they get 2 late goals, Nuri and Cunha with a brilliant goal in the last few minutes of the game. 88th minute and 93rd minute for that comeback for Wolves. The limbs in the away end. I haven't seen limbs like that
goal,
in a long time.
I mean, 4-on-1 was.
Yeah.
4-on-1. Have you ever seen a situation like that? There was a 4-on-1. He then passed it right to the one, which was Tommy Doyle, I think it was. And not only does he pass it to the one, that Tommy Doyle passes it to Cunha, who gets the assist. Unbelievable moment, one of the most incredible moments I've seen this season in the Premier League. I couldn't quite believe what happened when I saw it. Matt Weaver must be having a sleepless night. Imagine being a fan in the stands there, how your head lost. Like, imagine that. I would have been so fuming if I was a Brighton fan watching that. And as you say, credit to Wolves, because how easy would it have been for them to drop their heads after conceding with 5 minutes to go? You think game's
when
over
they were
at
the
that
better
point.
team as well, they were on top.
That's a killer goal if I've ever seen one, and that's game over at that point. But they didn't let it drop, and they fought their way back in the game. And to get a draw of that is phenomenal for Gary O'Neill. Gary O'Neill said at the end of the game, the advantage of having a 4-on-1 on one end is if you win the ball, you got a 7-on-10 the other end. So that's what they took advantage of. But brilliant point. Still leaves them winless though, and it still leaves them 2 points after 9 games. So as much as it's a great point, they have to build on it. Otherwise, it won't really help. If you know what I mean.
Yeah, definitely. But it's definitely something that they can cling on to and maybe momentum push from there. That's for sure.
They got Crystal Palace next, and then Southampton. Two
teams.
games.
Yeah, two. That Wolves Crystal Palace game is going to be so interesting because both those teams would be given a massive confidence boost after the weekend. So we'll see what happens. Man City against Southampton and finished 1-0 on the day. Sim went for 5-1. I went for 4-1. Didn't really materialise in this ultimate smashing of Southampton that we all envisaged. I thought it was a dominant display from Man City throughout, but they just weren't at their best, were they?
Well, I think Haaland didn't have his shooting boots on. I know he scored early on, but even that finish, I mean, yes, it went into the roof of the net, but I watched it back, and I think Ramsdale will be a bit disappointed he didn't keep it out, didn't react quick enough, because it wasn't right into the roof as much as it went above him. He did have a lot of chances, Haaland, to be honest, and if he had his shooting boots on, he probably should have scored a hat-trick if you looked at some of the chances he missed. I have to give credit to Southampton because they stuck to their principles. I know they end up losing anyway, but they did stick to their principles, and they did give City some trouble. They hit the post with Cameron Archer, and they had some really nice build-up play, which City struggled to contain on some moments. But obviously, Man City did have the chances to probably win this more comfortably, and that's probably what made this game a bit more nervous than it should have been. I think City probably did deserve to win at the end of the day, but I think credit to Southampton because I thought they really gave it a good go, and on another day, if they score one of them chances, they could have come away with a really good draw, but I think they'll take some heart out of the 1-0 loss.
Yeah, and it's just like follows on a theme with Man City over the past couple of weeks where they're winning games, but they don't look at their firing best.
Yeah, there's something missing at the moment. But, so what De Bruyne, I know Rodri's out for the season, but De Bruyne is set to come back. Foden hasn't really found his way back to his best form yet. That's still to happen. So I still think obviously there's big levels to go up.
Everton against Fulham finished 1-1. Sim went for 2-1 to Fulham, and I get a big fat 5-pointer with the 1-1 that I predicted, and it took from the 94th minute for me to start celebrating the 5-pointer as Beto got that equaliser in the 94th minute. But I thought Fulham were really good in the game for the most part, to be honest. I thought they were dominant throughout. They got the goal with about half an hour to go with the Wobie. You're thinking they're on their way to a really good away performance and a good, well-deserved 3 points. But Everton kind of snatch and grab right at the end.
Yeah, really poor performance, I thought, from Everton. And I was watching this game, and I thought as well, the crowd was starting to get really on the back of the team. Iwobi gives them the lead with a really nice goal. I thought Fulham were much the better team throughout, to be honest, and I thought they made subs as well. Reece Nelson came on and he was giving Everton all sorts of trouble, and all Everton had really was just a long ball forward, lumped it forward every time, and it was starting to get tiresome and frustrating. And like Ndai couldn't get in the game, McNeil couldn't really get in the game. They were just relying on basically lumping it to Calvert-Lewin and hoping he flicks it onto someone. A lot of the time, he was just going straight through to Bernd Leno, and Everton weren't really doing anything. And they were probably lucky that it was only 1-0, and Fulham only scored one chance because they should have been out of sight. I felt Fulham before Everton got the goal, but as we know in the Premier League, if it's only 1-0, especially a team like Everton who are gonna get players forward and put players in the box and a very physical team, the game is always open. The game's never over, and they did find one moment of quality, a good ball to the back post from Ndai, a good volley cross from Ashley Young, and Beto gets on the end of it and grabs a late draw out of the jaws of defeat. So I think Everton will probably take that, keeps their unbeaten run going, 5 games unbeaten now. Fulham will be bitterly disappointed they couldn't see it out. But I think in a weird way, both teams will probably not be too disappointed with the draw. I think away at Goodison, as much as they should have won,
I think Fulham will be disappointed with that.
I'm sure they're disappointed, but a draw before the game is not the worst result, is it? And
but if you go on the balance of play and how Fulham played, I thought they were impressive and deserved to take 3 points. So I think they'll be bitterly disappointed that they didn't win that.
I'm sure they will be, but I'm saying in terms of the result at the end of the day, it's probably not the worst result for either team.
Chelsea against Newcastle finished 2-1 to Chelsea. I went for 2-1, so another big fat 5-pointer coming my way. Sim went for 2-2. Cole Palmer doing Cole Palmer things in this game. I thought he was brilliant throughout. A bit of a transitional lesson to Newcastle on the day, but I didn't watch it. I just saw the highlights because obviously we were at Spurs at the same time kickoff. But Alexander Isak back on the score sheet for the first time in a while.
I think, look, Chelsea played really well. They obviously got themselves in the lead. I thought first half they were really good, but Newcastle, were giving as good as they got. They got the equaliser, which I thought they deserved at the time. Looking at the highlights, they created a lot of openings. And
3 big chances for Newcastle,
yeah, they had
one for Chelsea.
They had lots of chances, and I also think, obviously, first of all, the pass from Palmer for the first goal, one of the passes of the season, absolutely incredible. The way he turns on a sixpence inside his own half, he just has a little look up and with very little backlift plays an inch perfect pass into Pedro Neto in behind, absolutely on a sixpence for Pedro Neto. All he has to do is beat Fabian Schär and square it to Jackson, and it's 1-0. And by the way, Jackson, 10 goals in 14 games now for him in the Premier League, so fair play to him on real form. But I did think Newcastle equalised deservedly when they did. Lewis Hall across the face goal, Isaac tapped it in. And then Newcastle will be very frustrated with how the rest of the game went because, first of all, Palmer's goal, good strike, but Pope has to save that. I'm sorry, it's a terrible mistake from Pope. It's not even close to being in the corner. It's at his near post. Yes, it's fairly powerful. Maybe it catches him off guard, but it's poor from Pope. He'll be really disappointed with that because it goes right through him. He should have saved it. And then the moment where Isaac rounds Sanchez, he has an open goal to score at. Not the first, won't be the last player in this review to miss an open goal and going past the keeper, but goes past him and just waits too long, allows Colwell to come back and challenge him. Could have laid off Willock, could have laid off a Longstaff, decides not to and ends up getting tackled. Should have been 2-2 right there. So I think Newcastle will be a bit frustrated with some of the chances they missed. They'll take a bit of heart because I did think it was a bit of a better performance than they've shown at other games this season. But the Chelsea train keeps moving. It's a good win for them. Not against a not easy Newcastle team, as much as Newcastle haven't had the best season. They've got a good team, so fair play to them. But I feel like could have easily drawn this game.
Yeah, but you got to give credit to Enzo Maresca, the way he's setting up his team. I feel like they finally look like a team again. At the back end of the Pochettino reign, I thought that was starting to be the case, but obviously they sacked him. But they look like a squad that's completely together. They look like they've got really good harmony towards them. Reece James coming back into it now as well, which I thought he put in a fairly good display. But yeah, I think all credit goes to Enzo Maresca coming in straight away with that massive squad he had to contend with. He's made them feel like a bit of a family field again.
Yeah, doing well at the moment, Maresca.
But I just don't know whether this is like a kind of new manager bounce and they're going to get found out eventually, or this is the Chelsea that we're going to be seeing for the season.
I don't know if it's like new manager bounce, but I think, teams, with a lot of teams, when they first get their new managers, it's kind of, they have sometimes it takes a while to bed in, but sometimes as well they do things a lot differently, and teams take a while to see how they're playing, and it's also
Isn't that what a new manager bounce is?
Not necessarily. I mean, new manager bounce is usually like everyone's like starting from a kind of zero, if you know what I mean, with a new manager. I don't think that's necessarily the case with this one, but look, he's doing very well. Can they keep it up? Can they maintain this form for the whole season? That's going to be the question. We saw a lot of managers have some similar starts and fall away. It could be, maybe it is new manager bounce, maybe it is new tactics and whatever, and then it fades. Or maybe this is a new thing. I don't know. I'm still think there's a lot of challenges ahead for them.
I've heard with Enzo Maresca teams that they usually have a really good start, like first half of the season, then kind of drop off in the second half of the season. So I guess that's when the tests will come.
Mm-hmm. Well, next two games, I think I got Arsenal next, do they?
Yeah.
So we'll see.
their next 2 games.
And United, Arsenal and United.
United away next.
Which is...
New manager. No, they'll be...
We'll go into that in a minute.
Could be Ruud van Nistelrooy. And Arsenal at home. So 2 tough games for Chelsea. But anyway, let's move on to Selhurst Park. Crystal Palace 1, Tottenham 0. Both of us predicting Tottenham wins. Sim 2-1. I predicted 3-1. And it was just a disaster class from Tottenham. Absolutely spot on from Crystal Palace tactically and in the effort that they did put in. Spurs couldn't find a way around it from a tactical point of view, and they got outfought in the game as well. So completely deserved 3 points for Crystal Palace.
Yeah, and unfortunately Spurs were Spursy and they were lacklustre and they were outfought, they were outbattled in this game. Poor goal conceded from playing at the back, and brilliant touch from Esse. Got to give him credit because it was a brilliant back heel volley into Mateta for the goal. But Spurs just never really got their feet into this game, and really frustrating after a really good win against West Ham. And it looked like, 2 steps forward, but another step back in this one, unfortunately. So really, really poor performance and result for Spurs.
Yeah. West Ham against Manchester United finished 2-1 to West Ham. Sim went for 2-1 to West Ham, so he gets 5 points in this one. I went for 2-2, which proved to be the final nail in the coffin for Erik ten Hag as he got the sack this morning. Interesting from West Ham because we were looking at the lineups, weren't we, before the game kicked off. We were like, no Todibo, no Somerville. And it kind of was more of the same for West Ham. But he made the changes at half-time, didn't he? Somerville comes on, Todibo comes on, Soucek comes on, Paqueta, Mavropanos and Soler go off. And then they go 1-0 up with 15 minutes to go. And you're thinking a really good home 3 points with Somerville was playing unbelievably well in that second half. He was running Man United ragged at times. Casemiro gets a goal back with 10 minutes to go. And you're thinking, is that enough to save Erik ten Hag's job? But they get a penalty in the last minute. I don't know how that's a penalty, by the way. That was one of the most shocking decisions I've seen in my life. But Jarrod Bowen obviously sticks it away and they get 3 points. Dallo at some point in the game goes rounds the keeper, through on goal, the whole goal to aim at, and he blazes it over the bar, which has got to be one of the misses of the entire Premier League history, and never mind misses of the season. But yeah, Ten Hag got the sack and probably should have come earlier than this.
Probably should have happened in the Spurs game. Haven't won since then, have they? Since that Spurs game, losing after they lost 3-0, they then drew with Villa, drew with Porto, drew with Fenerbahce. So yeah, they've really. Oh, they did beat Brentford. To be fair,
they beat Brentford last game.
They did beat Brentford, but they've haven't been convincing. Let's say since that game, I knew that's the thing with these games like Brentford, you can win them, but that's not going to save you if you go and lose the next game. And I actually feel a bit for Ten Hag in this specific instance, just because this is probably the game he least deserved to lose in a weird way, because I feel for him because they should have been completely out of sight in that first half. They hit the bar. They had Højlund had a chance. Dallo missed an open goal. Bruno had a big chance as well. They should have been completely out of sight in that first half, and it should have been 3-0, and they were much the better team. But as good as they were in the first half, you could probably argue they were bad in the second half because...
But that's been classic United this season though as well.
Yeah, and that's been classic United for a while, to be honest. And if you think about last season, how many times they were 2-0 or 3-1 up and they gave up in the Champions League or whatnot. So this isn't anything new for Man United, to be fair. West Ham changed their formation. They went to a back three, and it really worked for them in that second half. And they were the ones creating the big chances. Obviously, Samuel's goal. But yeah, I feel for Ten Hag because that penalty just wasn't a penalty in my opinion. I've watched it a number of times. I understand why it looks like a penalty because I think De Ligt is a bit clumsy the way he approaches Danny Ings. Does he do enough in that instance to really knock Danny Ings over and say there's a clear and obvious error? No, I think it's one of those where if the referee gives it, I don't have any complaints. If he gives it on the pitch, I just have a complaint about VAR deciding that's a clear and obvious error and getting involved, because I think half the people say it's a penalty, half the people say it's not. It's clearly not a clear and obvious error. The fact that the VAR had to look at it for 2 minutes apparently, and then
I've not seen anyone say that was a penalty. I've seen everyone say it's not a penalty and it's a completely terrible decision.
I think it's an argument there was a penalty, but just because he does come in De Ligt, doesn't he? And he does make contact with Danny Ings, and he is a bit clumsy. So I think De Ligt was a bit clumsy in that situation. So I think for example, if the referee gives us a penalty, I think it would have been wrong for VAR to come in and overturn it, in my opinion, and say it wasn't. But for VAR to say it was a penalty and say you've made a clear and obvious error is a bit of a disgrace, in my opinion. And I think that doesn't nowhere near reaches the high bar for intervention. And I think that'll go down as a mistake from the VAR, in my opinion. So I think Man United can feel hard done by. But yeah, look, let's talk about it. So Ten Hag has lost his job. As you say, it should have come sooner. Ruud van Nistelrooy has been appointed interim manager, something that I think you said would happen probably at the beginning of the season. How do we think he'll do? Ruud van Nistelrooy did all right at PSV. Did lose his job, but apparently, and I think he resigned because of lack of funds or something. So, do we think it's a good appointment? Is this something that they'll appoint permanently? Do you think?
Yeah, look, it's all gonna see how he does in this first few games. I think it could be a good appointment for them because obviously he knows the club well. I think he would have the respect of the players as well. I just don't know what stage he's at in his kind of management journey. I know he did a fairly good job out in Holland, but obviously it's a different kettle of fish coming to manage in the Premier League. I'm looking at the managers available. I read a report saying that Man U are only going to go for free agent managers.
They don't want to pay.
They don't want to pay, so because they've just. That's what I'm saying. I'm looking at the free agent managers around. Are there many out there that are going to be that going to do a good job there? Like, who is there? The free agent managers. There's not much.
Allegri?
Do they want Allegri? Do they want that kind of star manager? I don't know.
So there's Allegri. There's, as you say, Southgate. I mean, Tuchel's got the England job now. Who's like free and available? David Moyes.
I heard another report that they haven't ruled out Ole Gunnar Solskjaer.
Yeah, Ole. I heard Ole as well. They're looking at. I did read that as well. But you might as well keep Ruud if you're going to do that.
Yeah.
Do you reckon Ruud's going to have it for the foreseeable? Then do you reckon it's like for to the end of the season, or do you reckon for a few months? Or
well, I think it all depends on how he does. I think if he starts off on a good manner, then I think they'll give him time. But I think if it starts off a bit ropey and they go out the cup to Leicester midweek under Ruud and then they back it up with a loss against Chelsea, I mean, if it starts off like a car crash, then they'll desperately try and get in a manager.
Is it classic United though to like Ruud gets a new manager bounce and they give it to him permanently, even though is that the right? Like they did that with Ole. I know Ole did okay, but was it the right decision to give it to him permanently at that time? They did, but it didn't pan out well long term.
I think if he starts off well, the right thing would do was to say we'll give it to you to the end of the season, and we'll reassess at the end of the season. I think that's the thing to do. But it will be very classic Man United if he wins a couple of games and they give him a 4-year contract.
You go, Rio just gone. they sign wherever you want, whatever number you want.
Ruud is at the wheel.
It's going to be very interesting days. But yeah, Ten Hag had to go, didn't he? Let's be honest.
Yeah, and look, he should have gone at the end of last season.
Yeah, they should have gone on a high. I think more managers need to do that. Like Moyes should have gone after the Conference League. Ten Hag should have just gone on a high, so you still keep your reputation. But as well,
what reputation did he have?
Who?
Ten Hag.
We won 2 trophies.
He did win 2 trophies, but there was always negative connotations about him and his manager's job.
But after the last game, when they won, all the Man United fans were clamouring for him to stay. They were saying, he has to stay, give him time, get all that.
I saw a lot of mixed reaction on that. I saw a couple of people saying he needs to stay, but I think the most part people were saying, all right, go out on a high now.
Look, maybe it's just YouTube. I was watching a lot of reaction to on YouTube, and most of them were saying, we have to give him time, and because it's a new ownership and all that stuff. I want to see how he does under the new ownership. So I think a lot of fans were clamouring for him to stay, as much as Man United themselves were looking for a new manager. I just think they made a horrible mistake because if you weren't convinced by Ten Hag, but the problem they've put themselves in now is they've just given Ten Hag a complete rebuild this summer.
A new contract.
But how much, De Ligt they signed, Xerxes they signed a lot of players to fit Ten Hag's system. And within 9 games, he's out the door. So if you were always planning to do that, if the shit hit the fan early on, then you should just never have given him that contract, and the sum was stupid in the first place.
The reality is, you don't give a manager a new contract and all these funds to spend if you're actively looking for another manager. It's lunacy. It's absolute lunacy. What are they smoking at Man United? Like, to give him
Ineos, isn't he supposed to change things?
They were supposed to change things, but they look even more batshit crazy than the previous ownership. They're literally out there twerking for new managers, having meetings with new managers, and they're like, oh, there's no one good enough out there, so we're going to give you a new contract. We're going to give you all this money to spend, and then we're going to sack you 9 games into the season. Like the whole thing is nuts.
Yeah, it's crazy. But let's see how Root does.
Yeah, let's see. And last but not least, Arsenal 2, Liverpool 2. Sim went for 2-2, so he gets another big fat 5 points. 2 5 points in the last 2 games of the game week, saving Sim from utter embarrassment this week. I went for 1-1, so I get a point on the board here. Really interesting game of football, this one. I felt like Arsenal were worth their lead in the first half, 2-1, getting that goal right at the end of the half. But I felt Liverpool came back into it in some sort of way in the second half and probably just about deserved the draw out of it.
But it's classic Arsenal trying to Mourinho the situation, and this time just giving a bit too much encouragement to Liverpool in that second half. And I felt like Arteta has this way of playing this season, and maybe at some points last season as well, but more this season, where in these kind of games, if they take the lead, they're just going to sit back and protect it. They got no thought about, extending it or whatever, or causing other problems. Their thought is, we're going to protect this lead, and we're going to try and see out the game. It is quite Mourinho-esque, to be honest, some of the way they've been playing. But if first half they did do a really good job in exploiting Liverpool. Definitely some set pieces. They had a number of opportunities. They should have scored. Obviously, Saka with a brilliant goal to open the scoring. Is it a bit of a concern for Arsenal, though? As much as they are scoring from set pieces consistently, that's now 2 games in a row they've conceded from a corner. Mm-hmm. So that's a bit of something to note, which as much as they've been good from set pieces. And then, I have to say, second half, they didn't really offer much, did they, Arsenal? And then they got caught over the top. Brilliant ball from Trent and brilliant play from Darwin for Salah to make it 2-2. I think it was probably what they deserved, Liverpool, in that second half for how they played. So a bit frustrating for Arsenal having taken the lead and to see it out in that way. But I guess a draw, look, it's not a fatal result as much as it leaves them 7 points or 5 points behind City?
5.
5, which, it's considering how good City are, it's a big lead, but it's not something over a season that can't be clawed back. But I guess the questions are, Gabriel's out maybe? Was he got injured in this game?
Apparently they're checking for MCL.
We'll have to wait and see. I heard rumours it's not long term, but he could be out for a few games. Obviously Saliba will be back next week. Odegaard's still out, so they've got a few injuries. And as well, they keep sitting back and conceding goals. I guess the other times it has been with 10 men, but this time it wasn't with 10 men, and the same thing happened.
But it wasn't with 10 men, but it was without Saliba, without Gabriel. They had 2 recognised defenders on the pitch at the time, which was Ben White and Kiwior. I think they had Thomas Partey at right back, who I thought was having a pretty good game. The best game I've seen him play at right back. And left back, they had Lewis Skelly, an 18-year-old coming on. Obviously, within a few minutes, he comes on.
Apparently Timber, he got injured. And
Timber went off. And, Timber went off with... Where was it? It's 15 minutes to go. So for those last 15 minutes, they were playing with only 2 natural defenders. So with 15 minutes to go and you're 2-1 up, you can kind of see why they kind of sat back a lot.
Yeah, but they were doing it the whole second half.
Yeah, which they shouldn't have been doing it there. But in the 15 minutes and when the moment that Liverpool scored in, you kind of expect them to do that and just protect that lead.
I'm not saying then. And I guess, I take your point. The moment Liverpool scored, that's where they were meant to be sitting back. But unfortunately, I didn't get to see the game live. I was listening to it on the radio, and I've read a few people's opinions, and a lot of people were saying that second half was very reminiscent of the second half against City. And when you're at home, that's not what you expect when you're supposed to be as good a team as Arsenal. I feel like Arsenal still have this complex, they can't be City and just go and outplay every team. They're not as good as them. So, but is that an inferiority complex to City? Just having that feeling we're not as good as them, so we have to go a different direction.
Definitely. And you're looking at teams that go toe-to-toe and nail for the title, right? Arsenal and Man City have done that for the last couple of years, right? Liverpool, when they were with Klopp at their peak era, going toe-to-toe with Man City for the title, they would not even dream about sitting back in a game against Man City, whether it be at the Etihad or whether it be at Anfield, right?
There were some cracking games.
Unbelievable games. They would go tooth or nail and just try and hurt Man City every given opportunity. Some games, yeah. And that's where Klopp got joy. And I think, look, let's get it real, right? Arsenal haven't lost the game to Man City over the past 4 games.
Yeah.
They've beaten them twice at the Emirates, I think. and they've drawn
No,
twice at the Etihad.
They won twice at the Emirates. 1-1, sorry.
1-1.
Martinelli scored 1-0. The year before that, they lost twice, so it's past 3.
Past 3 games, is it? Is it not the past 4 games? Oh, because it's only 1 game this season.
Yeah.
So they've once won to the Emirates and drawn twice at the Etihad. So they're unbeaten in the last 3 against Manchester City, right? So you can see maybe why they're doing it against Man City, because they're not as good as Man City. They're not as good as that Liverpool team as well that went toe to toe. So maybe they're doing it because they can feel like they can get points. But where I reject them doing it, where they should not be doing it, is games even against 10 men against Bournemouth. You don't need to be sitting back and protecting a 0-0 draw against Bournemouth. You know, have a bit of self-respect and go for the game, man. And they just sit back in way too many games this season. They've got the quality, the attacking players, that they can take the game to other teams. You saw a couple of years ago, you know, they were destroying teams for fun at times, scoring loads and loads of goals. And I don't understand why Arteta has reverted into like this George Graham, Jose Mourinho kind of manager. That's what he's like at the moment.
And I know they did it against Villa and Spurs, and to be fair, they won those games, and credit to them, because, you know, they got the wins. But like, City would never do that, those kind of performances.
Neither would Liverpool.
And neither would Liverpool. And I feel like sometimes when you get into a habit of doing that, then sometimes it's hard to get out of that habit in a way. And when you and there will be games where they need to be a bit more proactive about things, and they can't just get out of that slump because they've been so kind of defensive for a lot of these games. And I wonder if it will come back to bite them in some of these games. And look, against Villa, they were lucky. They should have probably lost that game, but they end up getting the win. Against Spurs, all right, they got the win, but again, they had to rely on a corner. They can't rely on that in every game.
And you know, they were clamouring after the Spurs game and the whole of last season, oh, we got the best defence in Europe and our defensive structure is better than anyone's in the league. Well, 2 goals conceded at home to Liverpool, 2 goals conceded away to Bournemouth, a goal conceded at home to Southampton, 2 goals conceded at home to Leicester, 2 goals away at Man City.
They've conceded the same as Spurs this season.
So they are conceding a lot of goals.
Well, same as Spurs.
Yeah.
10 each.
And the narrative is Arsenal got the best defence in the league and Spurs are completely open.
Arsenal fans say they were robbed at the end of the game.
Oh, my God. Arsenal fans,
with the disallowed goal.
It wouldn't be an Arsenal drop points if there were not Arsenal tears about refereeing decisions at the end of the game. Like,
the fact that they're crying about this, I think, is ridiculous.
The referee blows his whistle, right, before Havertz even gets the ball, or just about as Havertz is getting the ball. I think Havertz, once he does get the ball, and I think there's a bit of an elbow in there from Havertz and then a handball.
I think he handballs it
Havertz.
over Konate's head. Then he elbows him as well. And I think he fouls Trent when Trent's looking to clear the ball.
There was no foul, I don't think, in the build-up to that. So I think that's where the correct grievance is.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been a bit of a look. The foul he gave Kyrgios on Szoboszlai, whether you think it's a foul or not, let's be honest. How many times in a game have we seen those given as fouls? A lot. Do you think it's a foul or not? It's probably harsh, to be honest, and I do think he wins the ball fairly. But that happens in the middle of the park, and I don't think anyone thinks twice about whether that's given a foul or not. No one really cares if the referee blows for that decision. Sometimes they give it, sometimes they don't. It's harsh. It might be harsh, but I'm saying that happens in the middle of the pitch. No one even remembers it. You know what I mean? No one cares. But yeah, maybe you can say it's harsh. But the fact they think they've been disallowed a goal. First of all, Havertz then proceeds to elbow Konate. He then handballs it over Konate's head. The then referee at this point then blows the whistle for the previous foul. He then hits the post, by the way, Havertz. He didn't score. Hits the post. He then fouls Trent, who's trying to clear it. And then Jesus comes in and puts it over the line when everyone had stopped 5 seconds before. So the fact that people are claiming that somehow they've been disallowed a goal or something like that is absolute craziness. There's no goal being disallowed here. Yes, the game maybe started a bit prematurely and it's harsh, but there was no goal there to be disallowed. It was just a decision made in the middle of the park. And just because Arsenal put the ball in the net when everyone had stopped, they say they've been disallowed a goal. And that was never the case. There was never no goal to be disallowed.
There was no goal disallowed. That's all bollocks. But the ref just shouldn't have blown up when he blew up. That's just what should have happened.
Yeah, but agreed. But again, like, those things happen how many times in a game? Just because Arsenal put the ball in there when everyone had stopped means nothing. Doesn't mean anything.
I agree. But look, it wouldn't be an Arsenal game dropping points if there were no Arsenal tears. I mean, they're biggest crybaby fan base probably in world football. Like,
Yeah.
seriously, like, these lot have no
Honestly.
self-respect and no shame.
The fact they think there's some sort of agenda and because they put the ball in the net 5 seconds after the referee blew his whistle is ridiculous.
My Arsenal friend of mine messaged me after the game and was like, I was like, oh, that was such a terrible decision. Arsenal denied a goal. And I was like, I messaged him back saying, oh, this must mean Man City are paying off the referees, yeah? And these Arsenal fans, they come out with these conspiracies week after week. I'm like, what is going on here there with their crazy conspiracies week after week? They genuinely believe, a lot of them, that there's an agenda from the PGMOL and all the referees against them. And a lot of them also think that Man City have paid off the referees as well.
Of course they do.
It's madness. It's absolute madness. But anyway, let's move on to the star men. Sim went for Phil Foden. He did risk Pep Roulette, but he got through that Pep Roulette, but still no goal or assist. I had Erling Haaland, who got a goal on the day, but it should have been a lot more. Let's be real. I should be sitting here with a hat trick. But we do end this week with quite a significant gap, 100 to 89.
Nothing
I hit the
that hasn't been
100
overturned
mark.
before.
Come on.
Nothing that hasn't been overturned before.
Yeah, in my favour.
I've overturned bigger.
Have you?
Yeah.
When?
When? During the season.
Nah.
Yeah.
You ain't overturning that. Not 8 games into the
Easy.
season. Not
Easy.
much left football to be played, right?
Of course not.
But look, end up on 100 points to 89. We'll be back on Thursday for Predict the Prem going into the next game week. But thank you, everyone, for joining us today.